The post office is in trouble. It's lost money for 13 years straight, putting it in what experts say is a dire financial situation. That's bad news for a service that delivers everything from medication to social security checks. If you want to know the reason for this, just take a look at a first-class postage stamp. It guarantees mail delivery anywhere in the United States, even to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And to cover the cost of the trip, the post office charges a flat rate of 55 cents. These two things, mail that's universal and affordable, make up the mission of the post office. The service is back in the news as part of an ongoing political debate. But problems started years before, as the goals of the post office came into conflict, creating a financial situation that has raised questions about what the USPS should do, and how far mail should be expected to go. The modern postal service we know today emerged in 1970. That year, 152,000 postal workers walked off the job to protest pay and working conditions, halting much of the nation's mail. President Nixon declared a national emergency and called in federal troops to sort the backlog.
I have just now directed the activation of the men of the various military organizations to begin in New York City the restoration of essential mail services.
Part of the reason for the postal crisis was that Congress held the purse strings. At the time, the post office was a cabinet-level agency, and almost 25% of postal revenue came through congressional appropriations. And all important decisions, from wages to setting postage rates, were made by Congress. This led to artificially low postage rates, which were popular, but also created a stagnant postal infrastructure. David Trimble of the Government Accountability Office said oversight for the post office was similar to other government agencies.
The post office was actually part of the federal government. It was a department. And as a department, Congress played a much more active role in a lot of operational decisions.
Kevin Kozar from the right-leaning American Enterprise Institute said it made running a nationwide logistical system difficult.
You had all these conflicting demands that flowed through the public, through their representatives, and into the post office department.
To deal with these issues, Congress decided to let the government agency run itself more like a business. In 1970, it passed the Postal Reorganization Act, which gave the agency more independence in managing its operations. But independence came with a catch. The post office had to pay for everything itself, from operations to employee benefits.
Congress doesn't pay for any of its regular operations, nor does it have any say over postage rates.
You sort of have this organization that's created that's got sort of competing pressures on it, having a sort of a public role or public service mission of serving every community, while at the same time operating in a business-like fashion so that their operations financed all of their costs.
The USPS benefits from not having any competition in delivering mail to American mailboxes. By law, it operates a monopoly over what has come to be known as market-dominant products.
The letterbox in front of your home or in the lobby of your apartment building, nobody else is allowed to get into that other than the Postal Service.
This covers categories like first-class mail, marketing mail, and periodicals, which make up the majority of its revenues. Other services like package delivery are open to competition from companies like FedEx and UPS. This new postal business model worked because mail volumes kept increasing through the 20th century. The Postal Service benefits from having economies of scale. The more mail it processes, the less it costs to deliver each letter. This is crucial for a business infrastructure that is expected to deliver mail across the United States. The USPS has built out this infrastructure to fulfill its Universal Service Obligation, or USO. This is a collection of laws, practices, and expectations for how the post office should serve every American. The specifics of the USO are vague, but generally it has come to mean affordable 6-day-a-week mail delivery, regardless of distance or mail volume. Over the years, the post office has tackled mail delivery in a variety of ways, using pneumatic tubes, sleds, and segways. Even today, there are postal routes where mail is delivered entirely by boat.
Postal Service is often trying to do a lot of different things at the same time, which is tough.
And it started getting tougher in the 21st century. The internet offered a much quicker way to communicate, and in 2001, mail volumes began to decline. These declines prompted Congress to pass another set of consequential reforms in 2006. The Postal Enhancement and Accountability Act was intended to streamline the rate-setting process by allowing price flexibility on competitive products like packages, while at the same time putting a price cap on first-class mail that was tied to inflation. It was meant to help the post office, but it did the opposite.
A short time after it was enacted, about 12 months, the United States slid into a recession. Mail volumes and revenues started to plunge, and the Postal Service struggled to find the money to put in the Retiree Health Benefits Fund.
The Retiree Health Benefits Fund was another requirement in the law that mandated the Postal Service pre-fund health benefits to the tune of over $5 billion per year. All the while, the post office was expected to maintain universal service to approximately 1 million new addresses per year, a tall order when postage rates couldn't be raised beyond the inflation cap. And while package volumes were growing, they weren't enough to cover the losses from first-class mail. The agency began defaulting on its healthcare payments in 2012, causing debts and unfunded liabilities to balloon to more than double annual revenues. For over a decade, the Government Accountability Office has classified the Postal Service's financial situation as high risk and in need of congressional action.
At stake is the future of what has been, since this nation's founding, the right of every American to send and receive mail.
The fact is, without some important changes to the law that shape our business model, we cannot survive as a self-financing entity.
Without legislative and regulatory reform, our net losses will continue to grow.
I hope we can agree that the financial state of the Postal Service is unacceptable and needs to be fixed.
Several reform bills have been introduced in Congress to address the burden of pre-funding healthcare, and some also include proposals that would limit the scope of the universal service obligation.
Do we need 6-day-a-week delivery? Should there be delivery to every location in the country? Should you have, is it right to have a single rate, whether you're mailing a letter across the street or to Alaska or to Hawaii? These are sort of elements of service that we've expected as a community or society for the post office to provide. But if you're requiring them to live with these constraints, then the question is, how do we fairly pay and cover those costs?
But legislation that changes the USO has been difficult to pass in part because the post office remains so popular with Americans. And experts say any operational changes run the risk of inevitably affecting service for some stakeholders.
Postal policy is very difficult to get enacted. And the reason is that the major stakeholders all want things, and these things often are in tension with one another.
But experts say if Americans want the post office to survive, they may need to decide how frequently they need mail delivery, and if a 55-cent stamp is enough to take their letters the distance, however far that might be.